Jozan, it's really great to be here. So I may be the heretic in the room. I'm sorry, was there something?
No, go for it.
So I apologize. Does everybody know what a heretic is? What's a heretic? A non-believer, or somebody that believes something counter, right? So what I'm going to maybe take us through here a little bit today is a new approach or a new idea that certainly some understand and are using, but I think in large part where we may be putting the cart before the horse, and I think we need to maybe readjust here. So the conversation is really about that decision that every venture needs to deal with, which is how do we prioritize our time? Do we focus on gaining investment, or do we focus on sales? And so the real goal here is ultimately to help you have full control or as much control as possible in your success. That's really the only endpoint that my comments are aimed at and what I want to help you with. So how many people here are seeking investment? Is your goal, whether it's coming here or generally, to seek investment for your business? Okay, and we get a good sense of that. And I think next door, we would see many hands as well in the room. And certainly, I'm coming to you from having just listened to 15 pitches, and all but one of those was seeking investment. So a large number of people here are seeking investment. So what I will suggest to you in general is that we're failing you. The ecosystem, this global entrepreneurial ecosystem is failing you. We're selling you this sort of notion that the only way that you can grow is through investment. And so there's this sort of myth, and I travel around, I go to universities all around the world, I go to accelerators and incubators, and I see the same story sort of playing out, and this sort of, we sort of sell this sort of 1, 2, 3, it's, entrepreneurship is this easy. You can do these 3 steps. And you probably know these 3 steps. You may have seen them before, right? You have an idea, and then you seek investment, and then of course step 3 is you buy a yacht, right? That's the process we go through. Is that everybody familiar with these steps? And is that what you want? You got to have the yacht with a slide though, because I think that one's really cool. So this is sort of what it's, whether it's Silicon Valley or whether it's Hollywood or whatever, we've romanticized this idea of entrepreneurship, and it all starts with somebody giving us a load of money that we can go create this sort of business that creates a yacht. So it's all good, may all be a good idea, except for the fact that only 1% of ventures ever get angel or venture money. So it's pretty easy statistics to look up. This is not new information. So there are 100 ventures roughly here at Startup Istanbul. So this is going to be an oh shit moment, right? Because if only one, that means that if we use this math, only one will leave with investment. So does the lack of investment say your idea is bad? Is that what it's saying? This is the interactive part, just so you guys know. This is a pause. Amy said we had to have pauses, so I wanted to put one in. So no, it doesn't at all say that, right? You can have a very good business. Let's just one moment. So what's your goal as a business owner? What's the outcome you want? The yacht? But that's really a successful. And what does a successful business mean to you? What does it mean to you? Does it mean a good lifestyle? A quality of life that will afford you to retire, support your children, whatever the case may be? I get paid by the hour. Take your time.
So it could be a subset.
Yeah.
As a sub-results, but the main result is to create a venture that might change.
So to create some form of wealth, right? Ultimately, you want to be able to afford a good quality of life. This is no. This is yes.
Yeah, I mean part of it. There's a
substance.
Yes.
Or to be sustained in some way.
Yeah, I mean to create a difference in making.
To make a difference. That's different.
Problem, yeah.
Okay, cool. So the point here is that there are many good businesses, in fact, 99 out of 100, that are good without investment. And so the issue here is sort of, we don't need investment to have a good and sustainable business and to create, whether it's to make a difference or it's to make a good living, to afford to do the things, to have the flexibility, the financial liberty to do the things that we want to do. So definitely, we don't necessarily need investment. It's not to say you shouldn't ever get investment, it's to say that we don't need it to start, and we don't need it to get to that point of sustainability. So if we do the math, very simple, the picture's going to look like this when we leave here. 100 companies, and you'll have this one that gets investment. The numbers here may be better. Let's just say they're a lot better. So they might look like this, but it's still going to be a vast minority that get investment statistically. So you know, if you're an outlier, you may be in that group, and that's wonderful. The rest of us mere mortals need to have another plan. So we need to make sure that we understand that if we spend a lot of time and resource trying to attract investment that's not possible, that's time and resource that will not be applied to creating sales. And so I think we have to talk about how do we get to that place where we get to whether it's a business that makes a difference or quality of life or whatnot. So the core question here is, again, a heretic has to prove their point. So I want to make sure that I get to a place where we understand that this isn't a new idea. So lots of companies have scaled without having any investment, and you may see some familiar names and logos on here. So this is just a very small sampling of companies that have gotten very far, created lots of revenue without ever, until maybe a certain point, some of them certainly later took investment on to scale significantly, but they had customers, they were sustainable businesses, paying salaries, all those kinds of good things. And so I think this is not a new direction, but again, most of today's marketplace is selling you this sort of approach that if you don't raise money, you're not going to be successful. And I guess I'm going to come at it and maybe share another thought. So what will happen if we focus on investment is, and I see this, and I've seen this today actually in some mentor sessions, is we tend to focus on building something that an investor will buy. Essentially, we work on the product, we work on the MVP, and we actually, the more we work on it, the more convinced we are that it's the right solution, because we're not just financially invested in it, we're emotionally invested in it. So we have to defend that at some point. And so we've sort of limited our problem validation because we've sort of said this baby that we've created is beautiful, and so we have to sort of love our baby and support our baby, and I actually talked to several folks today that feel like they can't go yet talk to customers because in their mind their baby isn't perfect. And so that can be exceptionally limiting because we won't get an answer until we're so invested, we've dumped so much into it that we have no resource left to pivot and to create version 2, version 3. So not only might we not listen to our customer, but we've sort of put it all on red, right? We've sort of pushed all the chips onto one number, and we've said this number is our bet, and we're going to push that forward. So what I've seen anyway, when people are more sort of investment focused, they also get more sort of determined that their idea is the right idea or the only idea, and so they tend to be exceptionally defensive when they share their idea and ask for feedback. So what will happen, and this might sound familiar to many in the room, is you get the pitch, you give feedback, and the person tries to justify their idea, and they try to defend it. And of course, what happens for the person giving feedback is they stop giving feedback. They tune out, they start thinking about the emails that they need to respond to while you continue to talk and defend your idea. So this is something to be really careful of. And again, when we go the investment road, we have to be certain, because the investor, we need to reduce their sense of risk in order for them to take the leap. We want them to go on the journey with us, and they're going to have choices. They have a myriad of places to put their money, and their only goal is to make their money sort of create a return on investment that's meaningful and valuable. And so if they have choices, we need to help them reduce that sense of risk in our choice so that it moves on. So if we go this route, we also stand the chance that we limit the number of iterations that we can create because we're so sort of committed to this one road that we're depleting our resources quickly, and we're less able to make good iterations and continue to develop our product based on valid feedback, which is really actually the most important thing. So ultimately, it's about traction, and when we have no traction, which is essentially validation, there's limited investment that's possible because the sense of risk that investors have is just, it's too high when they compare it to other investment opportunities. And so, when we say a business isn't investable, again, it doesn't mean it's a bad business. It just means it doesn't have the potential to create the return that will make it worthwhile for an investor to be involved. So where do we go with all this, right? So, hell, Bill, you're great at presenting the problem, but let's actually talk about how do we fix it? How do we do it so it works better? So the first thing is, as we're sort of working on our idea, I would suggest that most of us, including myself, are idea entrepreneurs. In other words, we have this sort of thought, and we say, this is a solution for a problem that I imagine, that I see out in the marketplace. That's a hypothesis. And the challenge of that is that's unvalidated. In other words, our hypothesis, we have not found it, sort of it to be true generally. And so we need to really understand the problem, not from our perspective, but we need to understand it from the customer's perspective. And the second sort of step of that is assuring that it's something they're willing to pay money to solve. And there are a lot of people that have problems that have no ability or interest or urgency to solve the problem. If you were going to define a prospect, because this is actually very fundamental to this, how would you define a prospect? There are three attributes every prospect has that if they don't answer yes to all three of these questions, then they're not a prospect. So what are the attributes that a prospect has? They have money. Perfect. Yes, they have money. Yes, what else? We have two left.
Choices.
They have
Different choices.
They have trices?
Investors, they have choices for other ideas as well.
I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, I mean, like, if investor want to invest in your idea, he has also another ideas in his mind.
Okay, so I'm
choices.
asking a different question. So my question is, we're trying to define a prospect for your company, a prospect for your business, for your product or service. So he just rightly said a prospect has to have money in order to be a prospect, right? They have to have money. So there are two other attributes we're looking for that would define somebody who would be a prospect for your...
They need to have a need.
They need to have a need. So need and money, those are two of the three. What's the third? Say that again? The team. No. No, a prospect needs to have? Say that again? Aware, not just aware, but let's expand on that. What else do they need to have besides?
How to solve the problem? How to solve the need?
Okay, so they've established that with the need, but they have to be impatient for it, right? Well, that's money, right? So they have to be urgent. Let's use the term urgent, right? They have to be urgent for it. If they're not, right, they could have. We know many people that have a need, and they have money, but they're not urgent, right? So those are the people we call, and they say, call me next week. Have you had any of these conversations? Does this sound familiar at all? And then you call them next week, and they say, well, call me next week. So they have other things that are much more urgent than what you're working on. And really what you want to find out is what they're urgent for, right? So yeah, so the easiest way to remember this is need, money, now. And this is how you identify early adopters. What's an early adopter? These are your first customers, right? So when you think you have a solution, the early adopters are the people you go to. Those are the ones that want it before it's right. They're willing to risk with you. They're so urgent for the solution, they want to be the first on the block to have it because it's solving what they imagine is a great problem for them. So when you think about focusing on the problem, you want to talk to people who need money and urgency or need money now, so that you're actually getting data, you're getting information that will help you really understand the problem from people who are going to act. Not, what ends up happening is we get a lot of false positives because we talk to people and we don't work on really understanding their issue, and so they want to make us feel good. They don't want to hurt our feelings, and they say, I love your idea. Anyone heard that before? We'll talk about how do we take that to the next level. So number 2 here is be demand-centered, not idea-centered. And this is really where I was going, is that, again, we're idea entrepreneurs. We have an idea, and we think there's a problem, right? We have this hypothesis. So we have this, we then come out with, whether it's a minimally viable product or some product that we take to the market, and either it wins or it doesn't win. And so as opposed to being idea-centered, what if you were demand-centered? If you went and interviewed customers to find out what their goals are. Let's start with outcomes that they're looking for. Maybe look at a certain industry or a certain customer type, maybe pregnant women or the telecommunications industry or whatnot. Talk to people in that industry and talk about their biggest goals for the next 12, 24, 36 months, and then ask them what's keeping them from accomplishing that goal. What are your barriers to getting there, and then learn what they're willing, what they're most urgent to solve, what they're willing to sort of do to solve those problems. And then, of course, you can talk about what might be good solutions and see if those are things that they would actually pay to solve. But being demand-centered is key. Focusing on sales, it's amazing how good your feedback becomes when you ask somebody for money. Again, we get a lot of false positives, and I've had it here in the room today. A few people asked me, what do you think about my idea? I don't know. What did customers tell you? Has anyone given you money? That's really all that matters. I can only misguide you in this. The only thing that matters is the customer's vote is all that matters. And so that's how I want to help you, is to talk to more customers and find out their interest in solving the problem that you imagine. And hopefully you find out that the problem exists. The whole next step is actually finding a solution that they imagine will solve the problem. The first thing you have to validate is that they're interested in solving the problem. So I'll give you an example. So my wife and I, for several years, bought businesses and fixed them and sold them. That was, like people buy houses and fix them and sell them. We were doing that with businesses. And so for 3 years, we owned a weight loss business, which was really funny because we owned that after an ice cream business. So we went from being the drug dealer to the rehab center was sort of how we looked at it. So the funny thing that would happen in the weight loss business, and there were kind of a lot of funny things that happened in that business, but one of the funny things was periodically a spouse, a husband or a wife, would come in and say, "Could you talk to my spouse about losing weight?" I don't know about you, that doesn't sound like a very fun conversation, right? So we have to somehow confront the person and say, "You're kind of fat. How about if we help you lose some weight?" I mean, we're not going to do that, right? They have to, in order for somebody to lose weight, they have to want to lose weight. We can't project that problem on them, right? And I don't mean to be looking at you. You look wonderful, but I need eye contact. I need validation. But the idea here is people have to opt in. They have to be urgent for that. We can't create their urgency to be healthy or whatever you might imagine. So that's kind of the key here. Is the best feedback for any idea. We can do surveys, and all this stuff is great, and it tells us if we should keep going, but it doesn't validate our idea. What ultimately validates our idea is when somebody hands over, we would say some Benjamins, but whatever your money is, exchanges real currency for whatever it is the solution that you have. That's the only real reliable way. And the sooner you get to that, again, if your goal is investment or sustainability, dollars or I shouldn't say dollars, but monetary exchange is really important because if your goal is investment, you're going to quickly de-risk what you're doing for the investors. But even more than that, you may discover you don't need investors. I have a very good friend that just sold his business. It was a 3-year-old business. He's 40 years old. He does not have to work again. It's kind of that's a good day, right? You'd feel pretty good after that. He now can make all sorts of choices that he didn't have the opportunity to make 3 years ago. But the cool thing about his story really is that he did it all self-financed. He did it all with his own money and bootstrapped, and he was revenue positive in the first month. And so it was pretty obvious after his first year that they had some really good traction and things were going well. And sort of from the first year till he sold, he had a call once a week from an investor that was looking to give him money that to essentially they wanted to join his ride as opposed to him joining their ride. And so it's almost like dating, right? If you want to get a date, there are two ways, right? You can want to get a date, and you're probably going to be home on Friday nights, or you can work on being interesting, and other people will become interested in you. And it's the same thing with investment. We can want investment. We can passionately work on that. It's like wanting good grades or something. But if you love learning, or if you enjoy sort of building your own story, becoming, whether it's enjoying sports or enjoying art or whatever it is, you're going to begin attracting people that have similar interests and that you have commonality with. And for investors, all they care about is a strong return on investment. So you actually really want to do the same path, whether you seek investment or whether you just simply seek to create a good company, and that's attract customers, because ultimately they're the gateway to everything you want to create. So again, in these steps, if you just simply align everything that you're doing to, number one, validating that the problem is something your customers want to solve, and then converting them into sales and getting that monetary exchange, the rest takes care of itself. You don't have to worry about the rest. Investors will find you. They're actually really smart. They travel around. They have great networks. Don't worry, they will find you. And I understand the interest in getting investment, but you can spend a lot of your resources and waste a lot of time and get very frustrated and ultimately not have validated enough of what you're trying to do to be interesting for the investors. So I would just caution you, we need to swing the pendulum back a bit. I think investors have incredible value for the marketplace, but we have to, again, put the cart behind the horse, not in front. So you drive this process. You don't have to, just because you're in a program or in a system or in a school that sort of has this curriculum that sort of gets you prepared for a demo day, which is a wonderful tool. You don't have to follow that script necessarily. Use those programs to get to customers, to get feedback. All feedback is good, and it's up to us to learn how to filter it, to use it so that we evolve in a way that we solve real problems. Again, that people care enough. Again, people can say, I want to solve the problem, but when they pay money to solve it, it's a lot different, and it's a lot different person often. So here's kind of a thought, is the only place that investment comes before sales is in the dictionary. I don't know. Anyway, so investors follow attraction, simple stuff. That's me, but I have one other thought, and really, really simple for you, and I have to, excuse me, I have to prepare for this just for a moment. I hate to turn around, put my back to you, but you'll see what I'm doing. Okay, so I have two words I want to share. This is what I want you to focus on. Sell shit. By this I don't mean sell bad things. I mean get out of the building, get out of your garage, get out of the basement, and go talk to customers and work on selling what you're doing. Obviously, we want quality products. We want to build, as you said, we want to make a difference. We want to do something substantive. But get out and you can sell your idea. There are ways to kickstart, but probably many of you have heard of crowdfunding. We can get pre-sales. We can do all sorts of things that cause people to give us strong validation before we go invest a lot of time and money into making something finished. Is there anyone, so in the US, and I know many of you aren't from the US, but there are probably similar products that are in your region. But as I was growing up, there was a company that sold coins. They would sell their commemorative coins. So it would be various holidays or various occasions that they would create these beautiful custom coins. And in every newspaper around the country, they would put these big full-page ads, and you'd have some phone number that you'd call to order the coin. And so at the bottom of the ads, on every single ad, they would at the bottom say, allow 4 to 6 weeks for delivery, or 6 to 8 weeks. It was some long period. And do you think the time that they needed was to ship? Because that seems like a long time to ship, doesn't it? No, they wanted to see how many orders they got, and that would tell them how much manufacturing to do. So it's really the best example of an MVP, is that all they had spent money on was some graphic designer to build an ad, and some amount of advertising revenue or dollars to spend on advertising, but they actually knew demand before they had a product. There was more than a drawing. So there are no more rules in this than that. You can be that creative and that simple, but no demand before you spend a lot of time and effort creating a product. So that is what I'd like to share. I hope it was helpful for you. I'm happy to, I know there's a strong schedule here, and I want to observe that. So I'm happy to chat with folks outside, or if somebody has a really quick question, I may have a minute or two, but any quick questions? Did I put you asleep? Anything like that?
You're not going anywhere. We're going to be doing the pitch reviews.
Oh, that's right. I'll be here. I'll have my shirt, and we'll have fun. Excellent.
Unfortunately, I can't take it also.
Yeah.
So any questions?
Yeah, please.
Go ahead.
Just
Mike
hold
is
one
coming.
second. Yeah. I apologize. I have old hearing.
Can you give us one single example of a successful company without early investments?
That a successful company that what?
Without early funding.
Oh, well, I gave you the example of a very current example of a friend of mine who built a company with zero, and there are thousands, tens of thousands of these, but built a company that was doing business in 140 countries. He built it in 3 years, zero investment, and he sold the business and doesn't have to work again in 3 years. So, that happens every day. So again, my point is that the vast majority of our ecosystem is telling you to do something else, right? It's sort of selling you this notion that you have to get investment. My only point is there's another road, and the challenge is only 1% will get angel or venture funding. So we're sort of creating this false hope or false dream. And again, there are outliers that will accomplish that, and that's fine, and it's really good that's happening. But for the rest of us mortals, we need to sort of look at another path to create a business that, whether it creates the difference we want to make or creates a lifestyle that we want to create, whatever it is. I think there are very simple outcomes that most of us have as dreams and desires in this. Some of us want to be a Mark Zuckerberg or something like that. I think there are others of us that have maybe more modest dreams to create somehow a good impact and good lifestyle. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, please, real loud, stand up. Hey.
So what you're saying, that's perfect, that you're going to be focusing on sales rather than hunting investors, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but when you're in such a situation that your existing investors, so you are one person.
Yeah.
You can do one thing at a time. Either you're going to be running after making strategies and boost your sales, or you're going to be hunting investors so that you can inject money and then further enhance, right?
Sure.
So what happens, my question is, when your existing investor, they ask you that you're going to be bringing in more money.
Mm-hmm.
So but your passion is like you want to focus on strategies and doing sales. How do you handle that situation?
Well, yeah, so I mean, I think this is a great question. So your interests are different than the investor's interests, right? They don't necessarily care about your personal success. Their goal is their rate of return. I'm not saying they're inhuman and they're mean or anything. That's not my point. But you do have it's like accelerators have I'm not disparaging accelerators, but they have investing accelerators have a different interest in your success necessarily than you do, because they need to sustain themselves by creating, essentially these exit opportunities. And so I think you have to manage through that in terms of how do you moderate the investor's expectation, but ultimately it's going to be difficult for you to bring on additional investors without strong market validation, which ultimately means revenue. And so I think you have to balance that, and you have to have that conversation up front and be very open. And whether you're doing quarterly or monthly reporting or weekly reporting, continue to update them on kind of where you're going and what your milestones are before you go, if you need a next round, before you go for that next round. But what has to happen before that so they can support you in doing that. Hopefully they're a strategic investor that can make good introductions, and so you want them as a partner, not as an adversary. So how do you get them to sort of buy into your path, your vision for how to get there? Does that make sense?
Well, yes, somewhat.
We can talk more out in the hall.
We can
certainly.
talk later,
Yeah,
right?
And
Cool.
Thanks.
maybe something to add also, which surprises me. The minute you get an institutional investor, angels may behave different, but the minute you get a VC, you are telling, and you have to agree, this could be shocking to those of you who's looking for funding without thinking about the consequences. You are agreeing to sell the company after 5 or 7 years. Like, that's no joke. By taking a VC's money, you are telling everybody else that you are in the business of selling your business now. So at that point, the only way the VC can make money is to sell your shares either in the public market, which is very limited in many of the countries, or to sell you to another company. Otherwise, they can't get their money back. So those of you who are building a company they want to live forever with, by taking the VC's money, and there's nothing wrong in selling a company, don't get me wrong. You can be really willing to sell your company for wealth or for many other reasons, but you have to understand those are married concepts. You cannot separate it after a point. You cannot go back to your VC and say, you know what, I changed my mind, I want to give you back whatever you gave me, and I'm not going to sell your company. Maybe some VCs will say, okay, this guy's really crazy, I have to be away from it so they can take your money and leave you free. But most VCs will say, that's not the business you're in. Yes, somebody's waving frantically.
Hello.
Hey.
I don't know. I'm a VC from Saudi Arabia.
Welcome.
Excellent.
I have to disagree a little bit. So you're sounding that the VCs are villains and bad,
No
bad
villains.
people.
No,
but that's
not
what
at
you
all,
said.
not at all. But you can only make money
That's
when you
true.
sell the
See.
company. Corporate VCs are different.
We are a corporate VC.
Okay, see, I know.
Yeah.
So a couple of points. I think it's very important to also address. Of course, if a startup is doing very well and able to run by himself, then that's, of course, obviously fine, and he will succeed with or without funding. What funding does, and I've seen it several times, is that it accelerates that growth.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's important to realize.
Yes.
Even we've seen people, by the way, and we've invested in startups that were doing very well and cash positive by themselves. But when we came in, we added, not only us, but also ourselves and other VCs, added a lot of other value that's not only cash. So it's what we call smart money. So we added a lot of other things that he needed in order to succeed. Keep in mind these startups are small entities, so they cannot do many things by themselves.
Agreed.
Now, of course, a VC that pushes you to go on and raise money, I don't think that's the right thing to do, because the VC should be pushing you to take care of your business. right? That's the right thing to do. Raising money happens at certain times,
Yeah.
at certain KPIs.
But it's,
These are the only points I just wanted to
Exactly.
share. That's all.
We're not
Thank you.
arguing that position
No, no, it's
whatsoever.
perfect.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
but that's 1%. We need to serve also the
Yeah, you are
99%.
right. You are right. Yeah, there are the bad ones and the good ones, and
It's
that's
not
for
bad.
sure.
It's not bad. No, no,
Well-
no. They're businesses. It's just not investable. Totally different
That's true.
market.
Thank you.